Hello everyone, welcome back to This Is Not a Science channel, and let's talk about science. Well, today is our second episode of the biology series, and this episode would kind of be like an elaboration upon the previous episode. So make sure you check out my previous biology video in order to understand this one, because it will be based a lot on the previous video, that's all. Alright, so let's get into it. So when we're talking about cell anatomy, that basically means the anatomical features of a cell, and that we must relate to Mrs. GREN. So the 7 characteristics for something to become a living thing, for an organism. So we must look into that in order to actually understand cell anatomy. So if you could remember from the previous video, we got these 7 requirements. So movement, respiration, sensitivity, growth, reproduction, and excretion, and nutrition. So we will be looking into some of these ones in detail in order to explain why are the anatomical features of the cell like this. So we'll be looking at respiration, growth, reproduction, excretion, and nutrition just for today. And I'll be introducing 2 types of cells in this video. One will be animal cells, one will be plant cells. We'll start with animal cells because the cell structures are slightly less complicated than plant cells, which we can give a good start on. So here's a diagram of an animal cell. And I would like you to pause the video for now just to think about how would you label this cell. So try to label as many organelles as you can think of. And I've guided you with these lines so you can sort of know what you're trying to label. So yeah, here are the 6 labels, and just pause the video for now if you want to give it a go. Try to label it and see how much you can understand or figure out. Alright, I hope you had a go trying to label these organelles. So we'll start. So the first thing we'll go through is the cytoplasm. It's basically the median in the cell. It's like a jelly-like substance where the majority of the chemical reactions within the cell happens. It's just what contains all these organelles. So all these organelles here, they float within the cytoplasm. You can just think of this as a medium. And then we have the most important bit, which is the nucleus. And within the nucleus, we have DNA strands, which carries genetic information. And then we have ribosomes. These are extremely crucial for the cell, as it actually controls, it's actually responsible for cell growth. And we have cell membrane, which basically acts as like a fence, which contains everything within the cell. Then we have mitochondria, which is responsible for supporting energy for the cell to function. So we'll be talking through these organelles one by one in detail, so you actually know what roles they play within the cell and how they actually function. So let's talk about DNA strands and the nucleus. It is the most important bit within the cell because it's responsible for almost every cell activity. It's responsible for mainly growth and reproduction. The reason is because it carries genetic information, and it's also the site for DNA replication. So whenever the cell has to divide, has to reproduce, it has to replicate the DNA in order to ensure the cell that they reproduce has the exactly same copy of DNA. And these genetic information is also important because they carry what the cell has to do. For example, what proteins to make, what enzymes to synthesize. Next up we have the ribosomes, and these are extremely crucial because it works closely with the nucleus. And the reason is because it's responsible for growth and reproduction as well, and mainly for protein synthesis. Almost every organelle in our cell require protein to function because it's the basic building block of it. So it receives signals from the nucleus, and then it's going to construct a specific type of protein which can later be used for example, enzymes or other cell organelles for cells expansion and growth. The ribosome basically looks like this. It's a large subunit with a small subunit, and then they merge together to form a small blob. Then we have the mitochondria. this is also equally important. The reason why is because it's so important for a cell to be able to respire. What does respire mean? Because respire releases energy from food, nutritious molecules. So you might hear this quote quite often: mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. Well, indeed it is, because it's responsible for respiration. If a cell is unable to respire, which means it's going to be dead, because without respiration, without the process right here, this formula of breaking down glucose into carbon dioxide and water, which releases energy, without energy, the cell wouldn't even live. Other organelles wouldn't be able to function. So this is how mitochondria looks like. It's a sausage-shaped organelle. If you look closely inside, there are actually a lot of folds, which is for increasing surface area for more efficient release of energy whenever this reaction occurs. So it's absolutely vital for the cell. Then we have the cell membrane. This, as I said, basically acts like a barrier or fence to control what leaves and enters the cell. And it makes sure everything inside the cell stays in there. So it's also important for nutrition and excretion. For animal cells, all our cells need to get glucose. The reason why we need glucose is for mitochondria to break it down in order to release energy. So where does these nutrition come from? They come from outside the cell. So they have to go through this cell membrane in order for the cell to have enough nutrition to keep on going. And also for excretion, all the waste products, the toxic materials, they have to exit the cell, or else it's going to damage the cell. And this acts as a pretty effective barrier. As you can see, there are several channels and receptors which can control what leaves the cell. Because this is important. If the cell is lacking too much nutrients, it can actually take in more. But if there are too much of them, they can excrete it. So now after we figured out most of the features of animal cells, we can move on to plant cells. And plant cells are different. They have some other features which animal cells do not have. So let's take a look at it. So here is a diagram of a plant cell. And you can tell from the start it looks different from animal cells. Well, yes, there are several similar features that as you can see the nucleus, you can see the mitochondria, and of course there are the ribosomes. But just looking at the shape, it's different. So same with the animal cell. I'm gonna give you a few seconds just to pause the video and try and label these features, these additional features that you don't see in animal cells. So yeah, just spend those time to label these, and I'll check back later. Alright, I hope you labeled this diagram, and now I'm just going to reveal these organelles, right? So we got the vacuole, the chloroplast, and the cell wall. Later on I'm going to explain in detail why are these additional features present in plant cells. So let's start with cell wall. Well, cell wall is basically what it says. It's a wall. Its purpose is to maintain the cell structure, and it's made of a material called cellulose, or those type of strong fibrous material, and it's waterproof, and the main point of it is to make sure the cell is strong and rigid. So you can tell from the previous slide that our plant cell is actually quite regular shaped, not like animal cells where the cell membrane gives it a sort of irregular shape, whereas when we have the cell wall, it actually stays more like a rectangular, rigid shape. And this is because of the cell structures and of this material cellulose, which is right here. You can see it forms kind of like a fibrous layer, which actually strengthens the cell. Alright, next up we have the chloroplast, and I have to say chloroplasts are probably the most important organelles within plants, because it's nutrition. It's all about nutrition. It's all about photosynthesis. And why is photosynthesis so important for plants? Because it's their food source. So plants, they have to make their own food in order to survive. So they take carbon dioxide and then they take water. With a mix of sunlight, they can synthesize glucose, which is C6H12O6. And this is the process of photosynthesis. It's absolutely crucial, and it happens within the chloroplast. So with this nutrient, with this glucose, they can power their mitochondria in order to release energy from respiration. And this is also why plants are green, because chloroplast has these green pigments that makes plant look green. Vacuole is pretty simple. It's basically just for cell structure, and it acts like a storage as well. It stores water and food, those nutrients or the products of photosynthesis. It's basically a giant space, and it's mainly made out of water. It's just to make sure the cell stays rigid, stays in shape. So I guess that's all for this episode. I know these biology videos, it's a lot of me talking, but this is biology. There are a lot of information to process. It's a pretty intensive course, I would say. It's a lot to process, to remember, but that's actually the beauty of it, when you can actually learn about these organelles, how things function, or how you function in general. So make sure you subscribe and you like the video, and share it to all your friends who hate science. And make sure to turn on the bell so you can get notified whenever I upload new videos every Monday and every Friday. And next episode of the biology series we'll be extending upon this topic, talking about different types of cells and why are they specialized. Thank you, and see you next time.